Oh, my dear assembled Vaishnav devotees of the Lord, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in the live studios in the Haven, which is located in Hythe, Kent, southeast England, just a stone's throw from the English Channel. I so much appreciate your patience with me because I'm not reading every day, but I'm getting a little better, feeling a little better. Hopefully I'll be able to read more. In the meantime, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Mahima Stotram by Srila Sanatana Goswami gives the most succinct and beautiful glorification of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that we're reading ever. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhāgavata Purāṇa Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Prabho Kali Dvandoditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Man Mahadana Man Nistaraka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhuta dayin atini chochatakara hanamuncha kadachin mam premna rit kanta yokspura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right. We've reached the 13th chapter of the 5th canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, beginning the summary of the further talks between King Rahūgaṇa and Jaḍa. Summary. The Brahmana, Jaḍa, became very kind to King Rahūgaṇa, and to disassociate him from the material world, he spoke figuratively of the forest of the material world. He explained that this material world is like a great forest in which one becomes entangled due to association with material life. In this forest, there are plunderers, the six senses, as well as carnivorous animals like jackals, wolves, and lions, wife, children, and other relatives, who are always anxious to suck the blood from the head of the family. The forest plunderers and the carnivorous blood-sucking animals combine to exploit the energy of a man within this material world. In this forest there is also a black hole covered by grass, into which one may fall. Coming into the forest and being captivated by so many material attractions, one identifies himself with this material world, society, friendship, love, and family. Having lost the path and not knowing where to go, being harassed by animals and birds, one is also victimized by many desires. Thus one works very hard within the forest and wanders here and there. He becomes captivated by temporary happiness and becomes aggrieved by so-called distress. Actually, one simply suffers in the forest from so-called happiness and distress. Sometimes he is attacked by a snake, deep sleep, and due to the snake bite, he loses consciousness and becomes puzzled and bewildered about discharging his duties. Sometimes he is attracted by women other than his wife, and thus he thinks he enjoys extramarital love with another woman. He is attacked by various diseases, by lamentation, and by summer and winter. Thus, one within the forest of the material world suffers the pains of material existence. Expecting to become happy, the living entity changes his position from one place to another. But actually, a materialistic person within the material world is never happy. Being constantly engaged in materialistic activities, he is always disturbed. He forgets that one day he has to die. Although he suffers severely, being illusioned by the material energy, he still hankers after material happiness. In this way, he completely forgets his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By hearing this from Jaḍa, Maharaj Rahūgaṇa revived his Krishna consciousness and thus benefited from Jaḍa's association. He could understand that his illusion was over, and he begged pardon from Jaḍa for his misbehavior. Could we close the window? All this was told to Maharaj Parikshit by Shukadev Goswami. Text 1. Jaḍa, who had fully realized Brahman, continued, My dear King Rahūgaṇa, the living entity wanders on the path of the material world, which is very difficult for him to traverse, and he accepts repeated birth and death. Being captivated by the material world under the influence of the three modes of material nature, Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna, the living entity can see only the three fruits of activities under the spell of material nature. These fruits are auspicious, inauspicious, and mixed. He thus becomes attached to religion, economic development, sense gratification, and the monistic theory of liberation, merging with the Supreme. He works very hard day and night, exactly like a merchant who enters a forest to acquire some articles to sell later for profit. However, he cannot really achieve happiness within this material world. Purport. One can very easily understand how difficult and insurmountable the path of sense gratification is. Not knowing what the path of sense gratification is, one becomes implicated in the repetition of birth and accepts different types of bodies again and again. Thus one suffers in material existence. In this life one may think that he is very happy being an American, Indian, Englishman, or German, but in the next life, one has to accept another body among 8,400,000 species. The next body has to be immediately accepted according to karma. One will be forced to accept a certain type of body, and protesting will not help. That is the stringent law of nature. Due to the living entity's ignorance of his eternal blissful life, he becomes attracted to material activities under the spell of Maya. In this world, he can never experience happiness, yet he works very hard to do so. This is called Maya. Text 2. O King Rahūgaṇa, in this forest of material existence, there are 6 very powerful plunderers. When the conditioned soul enters the forest to acquire some material gain, the 6 plunderers misguide him. Thus, the conditioned merchant does not know how to spend his money, and it is taken away by these plunderers, like tigers, jackals, and other ferocious animals in a forest that are ready to take away a lamb from the custody of its protector. The wife and children enter the heart of the merchant and plunder him in so many ways. Purport. In the forest, there are many plunderers, dacoits, jackals, and tigers. The jackals are compared to one's wife and children. In the dead of night, jackals cry very loudly, and similarly, one's wife and children in this material world also cry like jackals. The children say, "Father, this is wanted. Give me this. I am your dear son." Or the wife says, "I am your dear wife. Please give me this. Now this is needed." In this way one is plundered by the thieves in the forest. Not knowing the aim of human life, one is constantly being misguided. The aim of life is Vishnu. Nate vidu swargagatim hi Vishnum. Everyone works very hard to earn money, but no one knows that his real self-interest is in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead of spending money for advancing the Krishna consciousness movement, one spends his hard-earned money on clubs, brothels, liquor, slaughterhouses, and so forth. Due to sinful activities, one becomes implicated in the process of transmigration, and thus has to accept one body after another. Being thus absorbed in a distressed condition, one never attains happiness. Text 3. In this forest, there are dense bowers composed of thickets of bushes, grass, and creepers. In these bowers, the conditioned soul is always disturbed by cruelly biting mosquitoes, envious people. Sometimes he sees an imaginary palace in the forest, and sometimes he is bewildered by seeing a fleeting fiend or ghost, which appears like a meteor in the sky. Purport. The material household is actually a whole of fruitive activity. To earn a livelihood, one engages in different industries and trades, and sometimes one performs great sacrifices to go to higher planetary systems. Apart from this, at least everyone is engaged in earning a livelihood in some profession or occupation. In these dealings, one has to meet many undesirable people, and their behavior is compared to the biting of mosquitoes. This creates very undesirable conditions. Even in the midst of these disturbances, one imagines that he is going to construct a grand house and live there permanently, although he knows that he cannot. Gold is compared to a quickly fleeting fiend, which appears like a meteor in the sky. It displays itself for a moment and is then gone. Generally, karmis are attracted to gold or money, but these are compared herein to ghosts and witches. Text 4. My dear king, the merchant on the forest path of the material world, his intelligence victimized by home, wealth, relatives, and so forth, runs from one place to another in search of success. Sometimes his eyes are covered by the dust of a whirlwind. That is to say, in his lust, he is captivated by the beauty of his wife, especially during her menstrual period. Thus his eyes are blinded, and he cannot see where to go or what he is doing. Purport. It is said that household attraction resides in the wife because sex is the center of household life. Yan maitunadi grihamedi sukham ituchcham. A materialistic person, making his wife the center of attraction, works very hard day and night. His only enjoyment in material life is sexual intercourse. Therefore, karmis are attracted to women as friends or wives. Indeed, they cannot work without sex. Under the circumstances, the wife is compared to a whirlwind, especially during her menstrual period. Those who strictly follow the rules and regulations of householder life engage in sex only once a month, at the end of the menstrual period. As one looks forward to this opportunity, his eyes are overwhelmed by the beauty of his wife. Thus it is said that the whirlwind covers the eyes with dust. Such a lusty person does not know that all his material activities are being observed by different demigods, especially the sun god, and are being recorded for the karma of one's next body. Astrological calculations are called Jyotish Shastra, because the Jyoti, or effulgence, in the material world comes from the different stars and planets. The science is called Jyotish Shastra, the science of the luminaries. By the calculations of Jyotish, our future is indicated. In other words, all the luminaries, the stars, sun, and moon, witness the activities of the conditioned soul. Thus he is awarded a particular type of body. A lusty person whose eyes are covered by the dust of the whirlwind or material existence does not at all consider that his activities are being observed by different stars and planets and are being recorded. Not knowing this, the conditioned soul commits all kinds of sinful activities for the satisfaction of his lusty desires. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Text 5. Wandering in the forest of the material world, the conditioned soul sometimes hears an invisible cricket making harsh sounds, and his ears become very much aggrieved. Sometimes his heart is pained by the sounds of owls, which are just like the harsh words of his enemies. Sometimes he takes shelter of a tree that has no fruits or flowers. He approaches such a tree due to his strong appetite, and thus he suffers. He would like to acquire water, but he is simply illusioned by a mirage, and he runs after it. Purport. In Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, it is said that the Bhagavata philosophy is meant for people who are completely free from envy. Paramo nirmatsaranam satam. The material world is full of envious people. Even within one's inner circle, there is much backbiting, and this is compared to the sound vibration of a cricket in the forest. One cannot see the cricket, but one hears its sounds and thus becomes aggrieved. When one takes to Krishna consciousness, one also hears unpalatable words from relatives. This is the nature of the world. One cannot avoid mental distress due to the backbiting of envious people. Being very much aggrieved, sometimes he goes to a sinful person for help, but he has no means to help because he has no intelligence. Thus the living entity is disappointed. This is like running after a mirage in the desert in an effort to find water. Such activities do not produce any tangible results. Due to being directed by the illusory energy, a conditioned soul suffers in so many ways. Text 6. Sometimes the conditioned soul jumps into a shallow river, or being short of food grains, he goes to beg food from people who are not at all charitable. Sometimes he suffers from a burning heat. Sometimes he suffers from the burning heat of household life, which is like a forest fire. And sometimes he becomes sad to have his wealth, which is as dear as life, plundered by kings in the name of heavy income taxes. Purport. When one is hot due to the scorching sun, one sometimes jumps into a river to gain relief. However, if the river is almost dried up and the water is too shallow, one may break his bones by jumping in. The conditioned soul is always experiencing miserable conditions. Sometimes his efforts to get help from friends are exactly like jumping into a dry river. By such actions, he does not derive any benefit. He only breaks his bones. Sometimes, suffering from a shortage of food, one may go to a person who is neither able to give charity nor willing to do so. Sometimes one is stationed in household life, which is compared to a forest fire, samsara dava nalalida loka. When a man is heavily taxed by the government, he becomes very sad. Heavy taxation obliges one to hide his money, his income. But despite this endeavor, the government agents are often so vigilant and strong that they take all the money away, and the conditioned soul becomes very much aggrieved. Thus people are trying to become happy within the material world. But this is like to trying to become happy in a forest fire. I'll read that again. Thus people are trying to become happy within the material world. But this is like trying to be happy in a forest fire. No one need go to a forest to set it ablaze. Fire takes place automatically. Similarly, no one wants to be unhappy in family life or worldly life, but by the laws of nature, unhappiness and distress are forced upon everyone. To become dependent on another for one's maintenance is very degrading. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, everyone should live independently. Only the Shudras are unable to live independently. They are obliged to serve someone for maintenance. It is said in the Shastras, Kalo Shudra Sambhava. In this age of Kali, everyone is dependent on another's mercy for the maintenance of the body. Therefore, everyone is classified as a Shudra. In the 12th canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, it is said that in Kali Yuga, the government will levy taxes without reciprocally benefiting the citizens. Anavrishya vinakshanti durbhiksha kadapiditaha. Bhagavatam 12:2-9. In this age there will also be a shortage of rain. Therefore a scarcity of food will arise, and the citizens will be very much harassed by government taxation. In this way the citizens will abandon their attempts to lead a peaceful life, and will leave their homes and hearths and go to the forest in sheer disappointment. Text 7. Sometimes, being defeated or plundered by a superior, powerful agent, a living entity loses all his possessions. He then becomes very morose, and lamenting their loss, he sometimes becomes unconscious. Sometimes he imagines a great palatial city in which he desires to live happily with his family members and riches. He thinks himself fully satisfied, if this is possible, but such so-called happiness continues only for a moment. Purport. The word Gandharva Puram is very significant in this verse. Sometimes in the forest, a very big castle appears, and this is called a castle in the air. Actually, this castle does not exist anywhere but in one's imagination. This is called Gandharvapur. In the material forest, the conditioned soul sometimes contemplates great castles and skyscrapers, and he wastes his energy for such things, hoping to live in them very peacefully with his family forever. However, the laws of nature do not allow this. When he enters such castles, he temporarily thinks that he is very happy, even though his happiness is impermanent. His happiness may last for a few years, but because the owner of the castle has to leave the castle at the time of death, everything is eventually lost. This is the way of worldly transactions. Such happiness is described by Vidyapati as the happiness one derives upon seeing a drop of water in the desert. The desert is heated by scorching sunshine, and if we want to reduce the desert temperature, we need huge amounts of water, millions and millions of gallons. What effect will one drop have? Water certainly has value, but one drop of water cannot reduce the heat of the desert. In this material world, everyone is ambitious, but the heat is very scorching. What will an imaginary castle in the air do to help? Srila Vidyapati has therefore sung, Tatala Saikete Vari Bindu Sama Sutamita Ramani Samaje. The happiness of family life, friends, and society is compared to a drop of water in the scorching desert. The entire material world is busy trying to attain happiness because happiness is the prerogative of a living being. Unfortunately, due to falling in contact with the material world, the living entity simply struggles for existence. Even if one becomes happy for a while, a very powerful enemy may plunder everything. There are many instances in which big businessmen suddenly become paupers in the street. Yet the nature of material existence is such that foolish people are attracted to these transactions, and they forget the real business of self-realization. Text 8. Sometimes the merchant in the forest wants to climb the hills and mountains, but due to insufficient footwear, his feet are pricked by small stone fragments and by thorns on the mountain. Being pricked by them, he becomes very aggrieved. Sometimes a person who is very attached to his family becomes overwhelmed with hunger, and due to his miserable condition, he becomes furious with his family members. Purport. The ambitious conditioned soul wants to be very happy in this material world with his family, but he is compared to a traveler in the forest who desires to climb a hill full of thorns and small stones. As stated in the previous verse, the happiness derived from society, friendship, and love is like a drop of water in the scorching heat of the desert. One may want to become very great and powerful in society, but this is like attempting to climb a hill full of thorns. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur compares one's family to high mountains. Becoming happy in their association is like a hungry man's endeavoring to climb a mountain full of thorns. Almost 99.9% of the population is unhappy in family life, despite all the attempts being made to satisfy the family members. In the Western countries, due to the dissatisfaction of the family members, there is actually no family life. There are many cases of divorce, and out of dissatisfaction, the children leave the protection of their parents. Especially in this age of Kali, family life is being reduced. Everyone is becoming self-centered because that is the law of nature. Even if one has sufficient money to maintain a family, the situation is such that no one is happy in family life. Consequently, according to the Varnashram institution, one has to retire from family life in middle age. Panchashordvam vanam brajet. One should voluntarily retire from family life at the age of 50 and go to Vrindavan or a forest. This is recommended by Srila Prahlad Maharaj. Bhagavatam 7.5.5. Tat sadhu manye suravarya dehinam sada samudvigna diyang asat grahat hitvatmapatam griyamandakupam vanam gato yad darim ashrayeta. There is no benefit in transferring from one forest to another. One must go to the Vrindavan forest and take shelter of Govinda. That will make one happy. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is therefore constructing a Krishna Balaram temple to invite its members as well as outsiders to come and live peacefully in a spiritual atmosphere. That will help one become elevated to the transcendental world and return home, back to Godhead. Another sentence in this verse is very significant. Kautumbika krudyati vai janaya. When one's mind is disturbed in so many ways, he satisfies himself by becoming angry with his poor wife and children. The wife and children are naturally dependent on the father, but the father, being unable to maintain the family properly, becomes mentally distressed and therefore chastises the family members unnecessarily. As stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 12.2.8, Atchinchadada dravina yasyanti girikananam. Being disgusted with family life, one separates from the family by divorce or some other means. If one has to separate, why not separate willingly? Systematic separation is better than forced separation. Forced separation cannot make anyone happy, but by mutual consent or by the Vedic arrangement, one must separate from his family affairs at a certain age and fully depend on Krishna. This makes one's life successful. Text 9. The conditioned soul in the material forest is sometimes swallowed by a python or crushed. At such a time he is left lying in the forest like a dead person, devoid of consciousness and knowledge. Sometimes other poisonous snakes bite him. Being blind to his consciousness, he falls down into a dark well of hellish life with no hope of being rescued. Purport. When one becomes unconscious due to being bitten by a snake, one cannot understand what is taking place outside the body. This unconscious condition is the condition of deep sleep. Similarly, the conditioned soul is actually sleeping on the lap of the illusory energy. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung, Kota Nidra Yao Maya Pishachira Kole. O living entity, how long will you sleep in this condition on the lap of the illusory energy? People do not understand that they are actually sleeping in this material world, being devoid of knowledge of spiritual life. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Enechi aushadi maya nashi bada lagi, harinama mahamantra lao tumi magi. I have brought medicine to awaken every living being from perpetual sleep. Please receive the holy name of the Lord, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and awaken. The Katha Upanishad 1.3.14 also says, Utishtata Jagrata Prapya Vardhan Nibodhata. O living entity, you are sleeping in this material world. Please get up and take advantage of your human form of life. The sleeping condition means loss of all knowledge. In Bhagavad Gita 2.69, it is also said, Yanisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagati samyame. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled. Even in the higher planets, everyone is under the spell of the illusory energy. No one is really interested in the real values of life. The sleeping condition, called Kalasarpa, the time factor, keeps the conditioned soul in a state of ignorance, and therefore pure consciousness is lost. In the forest, there are many blind wells, and if one falls down in one, there is no chance of being rescued. In a state of sleep, one remains perpetually bitten by some animals, especially snakes. Ooh. Hare Krishna. Text 10. Long purport or soft? Short?
Half a page.
Got it. Sometimes, in order to have a little insignificant sex enjoyment, one searches after debauched women. In this attempt, one is insulted and chastised by the women's kinsmen. This is like going to take honey from a beehive and being attacked by the bees. Sometimes, after spending lots of money, one may acquire another woman for some extra sense enjoyment. Unfortunately, the object of sense enjoyment, the woman, is taken away or kidnapped by another debauchee. Purport. In a great forest, honeycombs are very important. People often go there to collect honey from the combs, and sometimes the bees attack and punish them. In human society, those who are not Krishna conscious remain in the forest of material life simply for the honey of sex life. Such debauchees are not at all satisfied with one wife. They want many women. Day after day, with great difficulty, they try to secure such women, and sometimes, while trying to taste this kind of honey, one is attacked by a woman's kinsman and chastised very heavily. By bribing others, one may secure another woman for enjoyment, yet another debauchee may kidnap her or offer her something better. This woman hunting is going on in the forest of material, or in the material world, sometimes legally and sometimes illegally. Consequently, in this Krishna consciousness movement, the devotees are forbidden to have illicit sex. Thus they avoid many difficulties. One should remain satisfied with one woman, being duly married. One can satisfy one's lusty desires with his wife without creating disturbances in society and being punished for doing so. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we're going to stop here. This is 7:45. And tomorrow we'll start with text 11. And in the meantime, we'll ask these assembled devotees to reflect upon what we've heard. This is a heavy chapter. Like a bucket of ice water on top of a drunkard's head.
First we have from Rati.
Hare Krishna, Rati.
He says, Jai Guru Maharaj, there you are again.
Haribo. May it go on forever. Hare Krishna.
One from Shukadeo Mamdeo.
Shukadeo Mamdeo. Haribo, Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
Yes, Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
Jai Maharaj, Hare Krishna. All
Jai.
glories to Srila Prabhupada and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam.
Jai, all glories to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and His divine grace, Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you for your precious service, though your health is not good. Praying for your good health to Sri Narasimhadev every day.
Thank you very much. Greatly needed and appreciated.
So Devi Dasi says, Maharaj, welcome back. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Good to be back.
Sam Jane Simpson.
Sam Jane Simpson.
She says, Hare Krishna, Prabhus. Brian Phillips. Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Oh, right, Bhakta Brian. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Good to see and hear you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. By your sweet messages, I'm getting strength. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
It's also for
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
another one from Rati.
Yes, Rati.
Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Jaḍa, who are telling it like it is.
Yes, the truth hurts sometimes.
She says, indeed, another ice water bucket poured upon us.
Yes.
It is difficult to stand it, but impossible to ignore.
Yes. And impossible to avoid.
Okay, a few more. Subbarao Rajagopalan.
Yes, Subbarao. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances and all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada.
Thank you for ringing the very loud, transcendental alarm clock to keep us awake. Thank you for your daily readings. This chapter is similar to the allegorical story of Purāṇa.
Yes, very similar.
Bitter truth. And then another one from Rati.
Yes, Rati.
Tonight I noticed that it was said that anyone who becomes dependent upon another is in a degraded position. Everyone in this age is a Shudra.
Yes. Because everyone is dependent on someone. Yadrit Chopapanam. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that one who accepts things that come of their own accord without making, a very hard endeavor for it, he gets peace of mind and is not implicated.
She continues and says, but we also heard that to become dependent upon Krishna is a glorious position, and this will make one's life successful. What a contrast.
Yes, yes. And both of them are actually identical. Srila Prabhupada explained. The detachment from the material energy and attachment to Krishna are the same. Because one can't actually become detached from the material energy without becoming attached to Krishna.
Yeah, she says, this I found a powerful example of the material world being the reflected tree.
Yes. I went to give a little blood because I had to have one more blood test for the next whatever. And, there's so many people there in the hospital, and most of them are suffering like anything. And, it's always a wake-up call, going to a hospital, especially nowadays. And especially, you can't help but notice when I'm thinking about Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna and feeling more or less happy, until I couldn't get out of the chair. They had these low chairs and I just couldn't get up. And then I realized, I'm actually getting to be an old man. And it's unavoidable. It's not avoidable. So the lessons are all around us. But as Yudhishthira Maharaj answered his father's question, as to what the most wonderful thing in the world is, he said, the most wonderful thing in the world is that everyone before me in the whole universe has died, and yet I'm thinking that I'm not going to die. So it's ice water, it's true. It's very hard to hear, it's the naked truth. But it's also ecstatic to be able to see things as they are, and to be able to be sober, Such a difference.
One from Bhakta Peter.
Yes, Bhakta Peter, Haribol.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. In tonight's reading, I relished hearing all the explanations as to why material existence is truly miserable, especially the stellar purports explaining the condition of family life. The Bhagavatam is shining light on my life, and then Srila Prabhupada is expertly helping me to digest what I am shown. Thank you endlessly for your daily reading service, Maharaj. Haribol.
Hare Krishna, thank you for tuning in so regularly, even though I haven't been so regular lately, but I'm clawing my way back. Hare Krishna.
Rati says that I also remember the statement that trying to become happy in the material world is like trying to become happy inside a forest fire. Put like that, it does sound ludicrous.
Oh yes, completely ludicrous.
One from Vrindavaneshwari Devi Dasi.
Yes, Vrindavaneshwari, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. The verse stating, trying to find happiness in a forest fire stood out to me. I imagine air tankers flying over a forest fire. These would be the devotees, spreading the fire retardant, Krishna consciousness,
Yes.
far and wide to help all souls.
Yes.
Thank you so much for reading, Maharaj.
Thank you very much for being there and for your understanding and comprehension. Hare Krishna. My best to Krishna Katha. All right, I wrote something in the section of posts today, and I'm trying to gather my resources and be steadier at reading, and with your wonderful comments and your wonderful appreciations and support, I'm feeling a little better. So there's some hope that I'll be able to come back to doing almost all of the days of the month. Hare Krishna.
One more. Rati added another one. She said the part about the family members being like jackals because they keep on demanding things which make the householder work like an ass was hard, because it is so true.
Yes.
How can love in this world, which is endlessly glorified, be such a fallacy? It is like being in an adventure movie with the director's commentary constantly disturbing my attempt to disappear into the illusion.
Yes. Yes. Why do people do things that are obviously not good for them? It's the nature of the material world. Even Lord Chaitanya, when he was traveling in South India with Kala Krishnadas, his assistant, brahmachari helper, and he was doing one miracle after another, after another, after another. And yet he came to this one place and there were some gypsies or gypsy-like people, the Bhattataris, and they send their women out to entice and seduce men and get them into their own service. And even though he was right there with Lord Chaitanya, seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, doing miracles that only he could do, and still he got allured. Lord Chaitanya had to go there personally and drag him out. Hare Krishna.
Now we have one from Jagamohan Das.
Yes, Jagamohan.
Hare Krishna, dearest Maharaj and devotees, please accept my respectful obeisances. I love this part of the Bhāgavatam, and especially Srila Prabhupada's no-holds-barred explanation of material existence.
Yes.
This part of the 5th canto forces me to heavily reflect on my relationship with material nature. I spent years chasing the temporary high of intoxicating behavior. I was fortunate enough to realize how short-lived this type of enjoyment is, and began deeply searching for something more. My search led me to many dead ends, but eventually to the lotus feet of the devotees. These descriptions perfectly articulate how I was feeling about the material world and felt so lost. I'm forever grateful for the efforts Srila Prabhupada and his disciples have done to spread this knowledge and attract lost souls like me. Maharaj, your service to Srila Prabhupada truly is a matchless gift.
Thank you so much. It is the aim of my life, the goal of my life, so there's nothing more encouraging than to hear such encouragement. Thank you very much. And nicely said also, I might add. Nicely said. All right, again, Krishna willing, I'll be here tomorrow night. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. See you tomorrow night, same time, same place, same topic, as Jaḍa Bharata unleashes his mercy. Hare Krishna.